The Chicago Bears need another pass rusher, but Trey Hendrickson from the Cincinnati Bengals is not the right move for Ryan Poles right now.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And on the show today, I want to dive into the latest Trey Hendrickson developments here, where he is, again, mad at the Cincinnati Bengals. And there's a lot of obvious connections to Dennis Allen and the Chicago Bears. There's a need there. There's a familiarity there. There's a disgruntled player that fits all of the above. So should be a match made in heaven, right? Well, yes, Trey Hendrickson, very good player. Not about the quality of player Trey Hendrickson is, but it just doesn't feel like the right fit for this Bears team right now, despite how messy things seem to be getting over in Cincinnati. But I do think there's another potential pass rusher on the trade market that could be a better fit for where the Bears are now, even if I don't think, realistically, I don't think the Bears are going to make a splash trade at this point in the offseason, but there's one I would prefer over Trey Hendrickson, and also kind of go through, hey, if they're going to add a pass rusher, one of the big obstacles is they're going to need more salary cap space. So we'll go through what some of their options are to create some more room there for a pass rusher or a running back or whatever else Ryan Poles may still want to add later on this offseason. But the Trey Hendrickson rumor mill was restarted on Monday when the Cincinnati Bengals star pass rusher put out a statement through ESPN and Adam Schefter about his displeasure with how the Bengals have handled the contract negotiation process with him. The quote to Adam Schefter was, quote, "No communication has taken place between my camp and the organization post-draft. The offers prior to the draft did not reflect the vision we shared and were promised last offseason if I continued to play at a high level. Coaches are aware of these past conversations. Rather than using collaboration to get us to a point to bring me home to the team, they are no longer communicating. I have been eagerly awaiting a resolution of this situation, but that's hard to do when there is no discussion and an evident lack of interest in reaching mutual goals." That's the statement from Trey Hendrickson, and obviously coming off of another, 17 and a half sack season for the Bengals, back-to-back 17 and a half sack seasons, 4 straight Pro Bowls, first team All-Pro this past season. It's understandable that Trey Hendrickson would be upset and would want to get paid and would demand to get paid, and that if he's not going to get paid by the Bengals, that he would demand to be traded. And this has been kind of a lingering off-season trade. It's more than a rumor, right? It's a trade block. It's a trade request. It's not just a rumor. Like it's real here. But it really we were kind of waiting to see how it would go on draft day. It was like, well, could they trade him in a draft move? And maybe, if they were able to get a pass rusher, maybe they'd want to trade him, versus if they couldn't get a pass rusher, maybe they'd find a way to sign him. And well, the Bengals used a first-round pick on Shamar Stewart, the edge rusher from Texas A&M. So now they kind of have their Trey Hendrickson replacement in the building, but they also have still a massive hole on defense that he would create, and just don't have very good defensive talent as is. And Shamar Stewart, we know from our pre-draft work, is more of a raw prospect that needs time to develop, as opposed to like a plug-and-play 10-sack guy on your defensive line. So clearly, Cincinnati still doesn't have a ton of incentive to want to trade him away, but the more he complains and the more mess he makes and the less negotiation the Bengals are apparently doing, the more likely that potential trade happens. And so it's easy to then look at trade candidate or trade options like the Chicago Bears and say, well, they could use another defensive end pass rusher. They didn't really address it in the NFL draft at all. They kind of have that hole behind or with Montez Sweat and Dio Odengbo. And you think about it, where Odengbo can kick inside and play defensive tackle sometimes. So if you traded for Hendrickson, you could still have Sweat and Hendrickson on the edge, and you can move Dio Odengbo around and just have an all-around better loaded pass rush from top to bottom there. And perhaps the biggest thing in this whole process is that Chicago Bears defensive coordinator Dennis Allen drafted Trey Hendrickson in the third round of the 2017 NFL draft with the New Orleans Saints and helped develop him into a 13.5 sack guy that ended up bringing him to the Cincinnati Bengals. So there's plenty of reasons on paper as to why this makes sense and why Bears fans are excited about it and why plenty of people outside of Chicago connect the dots for the Bears to Trey Hendrickson. I just don't think it's a realistic move right now for Chicago or the best use of the Bears' assets and resources here. Like, first and foremost, as of today, the Chicago Bears cannot trade for Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson's current contract as a member of the Cincinnati Bengals is costing more than what the Bears have in salary cap space. Hendrickson's cap hit this season is just over $18 million, 18.66. Chicago Bears have about $6 or $7 million in salary cap space, depending on how you move things around. So not even talking about the contract extension that Trey Hendrickson wants, which is going to make him cost even more. But the current deal that he's upset about is already still more than the Bears can afford right now. So that's big, real obstacle number one. There's ways to create salary cap space. Those would have to be done before a trade. We'll talk about some of those ways to clear up salary cap space because it doesn't have to be just for Hendrickson. They may want some more space in general. That's coming later on in the podcast. But let's say they make some room. Well, okay, then what? And I'm left feeling like Trey Hendrickson is 31 years old. That is not old in the NFL, but it's not young. I should say he's 30 currently. He will turn 31 this season. Are the Bears in a position where they want to go all in on a player older on the spectrum of defensive linemen? How many more years of high-end Trey Hendrickson are you going to get? Certainly this season should be great. Next season, like 2026, probably should still be pretty good at 31 going on 32. From there, you start to wonder when and how the decline might start to manifest itself. He's not going to get you 17.5 sacks every season. He would be a huge boost for this year and probably a huge boost for next year, and that would be great. No one's saying Hendrickson wouldn't help the Bears, but you have to pay this guy to a super expensive long-term contract. Presumably he would like to be probably the highest paid pass rusher in the NFL, or right up there with Myles Garrett, who's at $40 million a year. Danielle Hunter's at 35.5. Max Crosby got 35.5. Like, he led the NFL in sacks last season. He's going to want to be one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid players in football. Are you going to commit $40 million a year to a 31-year-old player over the next 3 years? Like, is that what's in 3 or 4 years, depending on what kind of deal he's looking for? Is that in the best long-term interest of the Bears? The short-term interest is obvious there. But is this Bears team right now all about capitalizing on 2025? Or are you trying to build a Bears team that can be good in 25, 26, 27, and maybe 28? Like the entirety of Caleb Williams' rookie contract. And I just look at how the Bears approach this offseason. They go out and sign Dayo Odeyingbo as a free agent defensive lineman who's, 24? Going on 25 at this point of the process? No, sorry, he's 25 going on 26, but a young defensive end who clearly is someone who they see as ascending, someone who they think his best football is still in front of them. Like their choice on the pass rush has been to go long term and to build something for the future there. It hasn't been about maximizing it with maximum players for this year. So it would just surprise me that they would choose to go that route in free agency when, by the way, Trey Hendrickson was available then too, or at least Trey Hendrickson had requested a trade ahead of free agency. Like this has been on the table for the Bears the whole time. They've passed this entire time and it went younger at edge rusher, and now they're going to trade for Trey Hendrickson. Well, they didn't get one in the draft, so is that the impetus? I mean, I guess, but again, can't really afford it. And is that what they want to do in the long term? Like, for me, if the Bears are going to trade for a pass rusher, I would think they would go on the younger side, someone who can be here, 4 or 5 plus years, and not just 2 or 3 good years. And there's one other pass rusher that could be available here that's been rumored to be available that I think might be a better fit. So we'll take a look at what a Trey Hendrickson alternative would look like if the Bears really wanted to go out and get a pass rusher next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and each night brings a bunch of exciting action, highlight-worthy performances, momentum shifts, can't miss moments. So whether it's the game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action because FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game, whether it's before tip-off or while the game's already going. Player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays give you more ways than ever to play smart and win big. If the NBA playoffs aren't your thing, that's totally fine. You can bet on this upcoming NFL season. The Bears win total odds, the NFC North odds, Rookie of the Year odds, and so much more. Prop bets for every player's passing yards and rushing yards and player props throughout the whole course of the season. You can do it all on FanDuel, all in their app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. If you head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So Trey Hendrickson might not be the right time, the right place. I don't think this Bears team is like the Khalil Mack trade away. I mean, they did that in year one of a head coach with a young quarterback all the way back then, and it generally worked out, but it kept them from sustaining that success because of the draft picks and stuff they gave up. Hendrickson's not going to cost as much as Mack in terms of draft picks necessarily, but we don't know what that price tag looked like. Nonetheless, I think there's an option that fits the team's timeline a little bit better. And I should say option as in a player that is not being actively shopped, not a player who has requested a trade, not a player who his team has said they want to trade, but could still be available via trade. And that's New York Giants defensive end Kayvon Thibodeaux, who is on the fourth year of his rookie contract. The Giants accepted his fifth-year option and have said they are fully planning on Kayvon Thibodeaux being a part of their defense in 2025, despite using a top 3 draft pick on Abdul Carter, the pass rusher from Penn State. I should clarify, Thibodeaux plays outside linebacker. They're a 3-4 scheme, but nonetheless, edge rushers here. They draft an edge rusher with the 3rd overall pick in this draft from Penn State. And just last year or 2 years ago now, they traded for Brian Burns from the Carolina Panthers and gave him a huge contract. And so, and then they also in free agency this year signed Chauncey Golston from the Dallas Cowboys. So they are loaded at the edge rusher position. And we've heard Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, the GM and head coach there, talk about they want to have all that depth. They're excited to have all those players. Of course, they want all those guys to be rushing the passer because you can never have too many pass rushers. Of course. But Thibodeaux is nearing the end of his rookie contract. Thibodeaux is going to want a big contract extension as a 24-year-old pass rusher who had 11 sacks in 2023, a little bit of a down year in 2024, but was injured. And also the Giants in general took a big step back in 2024. That's why they were picking in the top 3 of the draft. So I think Thibodeaux has, obviously worlds of potential as a top 5 pick himself. He's 24, turns 25 during the season. He's got this sort of long-term future to where I would be much more willing to trade for that player, who I think can be around here for more than just 2 or 3 good seasons, than Trey Hendrickson. Now, obviously, both are going to require contract extensions. Both are going to require some draft pick capital that you have to give up, and that's a key factor here. If Hendrickson could be had for a more affordable draft capital than the Giants, that's a factor that you have to consider in how you're weighing these 2 players against each other. But it just feels to me like that's a player who you can have grow with your Bears team. It kind of gives you the best of both worlds, where he's an instant boost to your defensive line. Maybe not as great of a boost as Trey Hendrickson, but you get the short-term boost and the long-term sustainability of him being able to be a part of your pass rush as it grows. And then you can still have, all the things we talked about with Odengbo can kick inside and Sweat can kick inside, and it sort of solves that pass rush conundrum there. And the nice thing about Thibodeaux also is that, the Giants accepted his 5th-year option, so it's not like you're trading for him and he's in the last year of his contract just yet. I mean, he's in the last of the sort of the first 4 years of the rookie deal, but he doesn't really get expensive until that 5th year. His cap hit this year is $9.9 million, and then his 5th-year option will be $14.75 million. 9.9 is still more cap space than what the Bears have today, right now, but a lot easier to clear a little bit of room for Kayvon Thibodeaux than to clear twice as much room for Trey Hendrickson. This to me just aligns better with where the Bears are right now. And if the Giants are willing to say, hey, we need to get something for Thibodeau rather than, you're 2 years away from letting him walk in free agency. Like, are they, because I don't think they can afford to sign Thibodeau long-term while they've got Brian Burns on an expensive long-term contract. And then Abdul Carter is not cheap as a top rookie contract, but then also B, like, is growing on the bench. Like, who's going to be the number 3 in that rotation? Your top 5 pick this year, your top 5 highly paid player in Thibodeau, or your highly paid veteran trade target in Brian Burns. Like, there's no such thing as too many great pass rushers, but eventually, like, there does become a push comes to shove here when it comes to financial value and investment in all of these players. And like, that's just too much to have invested in a number 3 edge rusher in a rotation here. I can see where the Giants say, well, we've got him under contract this year and the 5th-year option, so they don't have to trade him right now. They can go through this rookie season, and then in next offseason, he'll be entering the final year of his rookie deal on the 5th-year option, and then there's more pressure to trade him. But at the same time, you want to get good value for him. You want to maximize that value, and you want to also be able to maximize the value of the other players on your defense right now, and to get the most out of Abdul Carter and get the most out of Brian Burns. And Chauncey Golston is now number 4 in that rotation after you just signed him as a free agent. Like, it just feels like you're not getting the most out of these assets here. Would you be better off getting some sort of good draft pick haul from the Bears? I mean, I don't know exactly what that looks like at this stage of the process. I mean, they traded for Montez Sweat at the end of his rookie contract for a 2nd-round pick. Thibodeau's coming off an injury down year. Like, is something like that a more reasonable price tag there? It's hard to say at this point. But clearly the Giants are, like, because the Giants are not shopping Thibodeau, the Giants have said we want him to be here essentially. They're not going to just trade him for pennies on the dollar here, right? The leverage is in the Giants' hands to say, no, we're happy to keep him. Whereas with the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson, the leverage could be in the Bears' hands saying, well, listen, Hendrickson doesn't want to be there. You're not going to keep him. Give him to us for a good deal. So I can understand that. And the other big obstacle here is that Joe Schoen and Brian Dable in New York are fighting for their jobs. They're on the hot seat. If they don't win this season, they're going to be fired. And so they're not incentivized to trade away a player who can help their team this year for a future draft pick that's not going to help your team this year. Like, they're not as focused on the future. They're focused on the present. And the Giants, I don't think, are in a position where they want to get rid of any good players. They want to add more good players, even if it might be in their best interest long-term for the team to say, hey, you get the most that you can for Thibodeau so that asset doesn't end up going to waste as he gets later into his contract and potentially hits free agency, and then you don't get the return on that investment. But they don't have time to worry about that. They've got to have the best defense possible this year. Trading Thibodeau makes them worse this year, and that's not in Brian Dable and Joe Schoen's personal best interests. So I'm not expecting a Thibodeau deal to get done, but maybe the right offer could talk them into it. But then you don't want to overpay for a pass rusher like that if you're the Bears, especially because you've got other things you need to fill here. You do want to build sustainably for the long term, and you don't have the salary cap space to do that right now. I do think at some point the Bears are going to create some more salary cap space between now and the training camp, or at least now in week 1, just to kind of build some extra breathing room in there. And they have a handful of options here that don't have to be too controversial, don't have to, screw the future and push a bunch of money. Like, you don't have to mortgage the future and say, oh no, we need this cap space now by moving all this money around and getting yourself into cap trouble. I think they can responsibly create a little bit more room now to have the kind of space to maybe not trade for Trey Hendrickson, but sign a free agent pass rusher, sign a free agent running back, like it's been rumored. We'll take a look at some of the Bears' salary cap space wiggle room options next on Locked On Bears. The Bears' salary cap space this offseason kind of disappeared quickly. We went into this free agent period, or really we went into the trades before free agency, feeling pretty good about this Bears cap space, right? They were among the league leaders in salary cap space. Ryan Poles had done a really good job of managing those numbers and trying to give them a lot of flexibility. But the spending happened quickly, and some of it ended up, I don't want to say quietly, but I think some of the numbers ended up being higher in terms of the cap hit than maybe we would have first thought. Of course, it shouldn't be a surprise that a team that trades for Jonah Jackson and Joe Thuney and then signs Drew Dahlman, Grady Jarrett, and Dio Odengbo in free agency, they're going to spend a lot of money doing that. That's not a cheap set of acquisitions for the Bears to make, but we kind of still thought they might have some decent cap space here. But then you do the contract extension with Jonah Jackson that gives him a almost $15 million cap hit this season and $17 million the next couple of seasons. Drew Dahlman signs a big contract that pays him $14 million a year, and he's got a pretty significant cap hit in there. Dayo Odengbo's deal actually was a little bit more backloaded and brought his year one number down just to try and kind of fit him in here, because then you add in like TJ Edwards gets a contract extension and et cetera, et cetera. All the rookies in the draft class, you go from two second round picks to 3 is a bigger contract than what the Bears would have had there. And now you're not broke, you're not poor in terms of salary cap space, but you're tight. Money's tight under the salary cap around the Chicago Bears right now, and that's part of why all these rumors about Nick Chubb or J.K. Dobbins or potential pass rushers for the Bears, like nothing's happening imminently here because they got to do some working around here. They if you think about it, like as they approach this upcoming season, there's incentives and contracts. As you cut down your 53-man roster, maybe you'll clear up a little bit of room here and there, but for the most part, the Bears are again not capped out, but feeling the pressure a little bit. So what can they do? Well, there's one thing I'm fully expecting that will happen. And then depending on how they structure that will depend on whether they need to do anything beyond that. But I think the main, clear, easy, obvious way that the Bears are going to be able to create some kind of instant salary cap space is by giving Joe Thuney a contract extension. You might be thinking to yourself, wait, give Joe Thuney more money and that's going to create more salary cap space? Shouldn't it be the opposite? And it's kind of one of the financial tricks of the trade that you see teams do, is that when you give a player a contract extension, you can kind of move the money around the way that you want it to. So like some money you can move, some money you can't move. But essentially the Bears can take some of the money for, like if they add 1 or 2 years to Joe Thuney's contract and they add whatever it is, another $30 million, 2 year, $30 million extension, whatever the number ends up looking like, you can add on that $30 million with the current money he has, and then kind of rearrange it in whatever years you want. So say if you were going to do it equally, right, you do $15 million in 2026 and then $15 million in 2027. Again, round numbers. I'm just sort of spitballing here, and that would be adding no money this year and putting all the money in the future. Or if you could still do a 2 year, $30 million contract extension, but then take $10 million off of this year and add it to the 30 in the future. So he's still getting the same amount of money. You're just changing what years it belongs to. So you could reduce his current salary cap hit by $10 million, make him a $6 million guard instead of a $16 million guard. But then you have to put that 10 in the 2 added years that you put on. And so it'd be like you go 6, 20, 20 instead of going 16, 15, 15. So that the total value of the deal is exactly the same. You just move the money around into different years to take some of the money out of this year and put it in the future year. So he's still getting all the money, and you're adding years to his contract, but the added years allow you to move this year's money into the future years to then create immediate salary cap space this year, but then increase the salary you have to pay him in the future. You're just changing. I'll gladly pay you on Tuesday for a hamburger today. What's the old cartoon thing? Like basically that. Yeah, we'll still give you the money. It's still going in your pocket, and really he already has the money. They're just moving the salary cap number to the future there of where he's going to get it. It becomes guaranteed money. There's a whole accounting that works there. But so the Bears could lower their salary cap just by extending Joe Thuney, and that might be enough to say we don't really need to make any other moves. But if they wanted to go out and trade for Trey Hendrickson or trade for Kayvon Thibodeau or trade for some other player that we're not thinking of here, I mean, those are kind of the 2 main pass rushers that are most intriguing on the market. But nonetheless, or if the Bears just look at it and say, hey, we need to sign a pass rusher. We want to sign Von Miller or whatever it's going to take. And they want to create some more salary cap space. A few options jump to mind, some better than others. So the Bears can restructure contracts. And essentially what you do, if you want to restructure somebody's contract, you say, we're going to pay you the same amount of money, but we're going to make more of it guaranteed and push it into the future. So like, we're going to take some of your future money, give it to you now, but then like bring down your year 1 cap hit as a result. Like the non-guaranteed money goes down and we push that into the future and we pay you some more of that up front. But it's tricky to kind of oversimplify the bean counting here. But essentially you just move the dollars around so the cap hit is lower this year and you increase it in future years. And you can only do that with money that's not currently guaranteed, and there's some math rules as to what you can and can't move into the future. But the 3 contracts that are very easily restructurable right now is Montez Sweat, DJ Moore, and Jalen Johnson. Those are deals that the Bears have a lot of time in and can move money into the future in. The problem with restructuring is that when you move that money into the future, it becomes guaranteed. And so every time you restructure a player, you lose the flexibility of getting out of that contract in the future. You make it so that you are guaranteeing he stays around longer than what his contract currently says. That's sort of the exchange. And in exchange for getting to lower the cap hit, you're guaranteeing more of his future. And that's why it's allowed. You don't even really need the player's permission. If you're just moving the money around, it's not something you have to negotiate. You just kind of go in and do it yourself, and you give him more guaranteed money, and he says, great, thanks for the guaranteed money. Do the Bears want to guarantee DJ Moore more money long term? They give him the contract extension, but like after the Luther Burden drafting and Rome Odunze's development, there's some question about just how long DJ Moore will be here. He'll be here for a little while, but do they want to maintain some of that long-term flexibility just in case DJ Moore is not the perfect fit for Ben Johnson, or that Luther Burden and Rome Odunze make DJ Moore expendable? Like maybe you don't want to restructure his contract just in case after a year or two, you're more eager to get out of it than you are right now. And I don't know, do we have to have the same conversation about Montez Sweat? ? I mean, a lot to like his first half of the season he was there with the Bears, but a little bit of a down 2024. Does part of you say we should give ourselves an out just in case, for whatever reason, Montez Sweat doesn't bounce back? And if Montez Sweat has another disappointing 2025 season, are you sure you still want to pay him? He's going to make $25 million a year each of the next 4 years. Presumably, he'll bounce back. He'll play well. He'll be good to go, and no worries, no problem. But do you want to lock yourself into that no matter what? Or do you say, yeah, it's fine. We can handle this? Or do you say, let's leave the option open just in case things don't work out well there? Then there's Jalen Johnson, who, by all accounts, everything is going smoothly with Jalen Johnson, and I don't think there's much reason to be concerned. But he does have an injury history. I mean, that's the only one. He played every game in 2024, his first fully healthy season, so everything's trending in the right direction, and I would think maybe a Jalen Johnson restructure might make the most sense there, just in terms of the player you probably have the least long-term doubts about at this stage of the process. But he's already got some pretty good guaranteed money baked into that contract, and if you restructured, you could free about up to $9 million-ish in there. I mean, it's Brian Poles has got some options. Restructuring is always a dangerous money game to move around. The Saints have gotten in trouble with that, with all the salary cap trouble they've put themselves in through this process. So I think we'll see the Bears be very cautious about this, and they're not going to create a bunch of cap space unless they absolutely have to for some big move. And if anything, it's a slight little deal here or there. I mean, I guess a couple other quick options you could throw out there. If you gave a contract extension to Kevin Byard, if you just said, we do want him around for another year, you could move his money around, or heaven forbid, a Tremaine Edmonds restructure or contract extension. Like, I don't think that's going to happen, but you could move some money around that way. They've got options if they're desperate, but I don't think they need to be desperate. And that's why I don't think a Trey Hendrickson trade is going to happen. I don't think a Hendrickson trade is in the best long-term interest of this Bears team, and I think Thibodeau would make more sense, but also probably not super, super likely to happen. I do think the Bears will add a pass rusher in some form in free agency between now and certainly week 1, if not between now and the start of training camp. And when the Bears do, you can be sure we'll break it down for you right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're looking for a second listen, you can check out the Locked On NFL podcast I co-hosted this morning with Tyler Rowland. We talked about the Saints quarterback situation without Derek Carr and whether Aaron Rodgers would make sense there. We talked about the Trey Hendrickson trade situation. We talked about the Bengals and Shedeur Sanders and the drama coming out of rookie minicamp. And we talked about the NFL schedule and the Eagles playing the Cowboys in week 1 and not the Chicago Bears. Yesterday's Locked On NFL, Tyler Rowland predicts that the Bears will win the NFC North. So there's some good Bears talk on Locked On NFL for you to go check out for your second listen today. Come on back tomorrow. Make Locked On Bears your first listen once again for another opportunity to bear down.